But this is also linked to the fact that for the rest of the world, Europe is the zone where life is best. So we've got to attempt, and I think that the young people have a task here even more so than the older generation. We've got to be very, very offensive in helping these people to find protection in Europe. Not everybody is entitled to protection in Europe, but those who are being persecuted, whose wives are being, or women, relatives are being raped, whose children are being tortured and killed, they have a place in Europe.
Yes, thank you. We're all getting older, of course, Mr. Juncker. Me too.
That'll happen. That'll happen.
The question is, how do you see the EU looking 50 years from now? Maybe a utopian version, maybe less utopian version. How do you see the EU looking in 50 years?
Well, I know how it shouldn't look, that's for sure. We've got this concept taking us back to the 50s, the post-war era. The idea that the European Union should become the United States of Europe. That's not my concept of things. We're never going to be like the USA. Europe lives on the basis of its diversity, its various landscapes, its national and regional cultures and features, and if you don't see this, an attempt to create a melting pot out of Europe, an integration magma is the expression I used in Parliament the other day. Basically, he's not really taking account of people's sensitivity. So she would move away from this maximized integration concept. It's not going to happen because that's not what people want. I mean, people from Bavaria, the Luxembourgers, Wallonians, Flemings, they want to maintain the identity they have. At the same time, they want to create a sphere of solidarity, a tighter, more robust sphere of solidarity where people can get on together. We need to want to and strive to get on together. And I think in many ways, a better Europe is necessary. What we need to do needs to be specified in more comprehensible and conceptual terms. Nobody really understands what's being offered and suggested in Europe, in Brussels and Strasbourg. People tend to live far away from these places. So we need to be able to explain Europe better, but we need more Europe. And a better Europe in terms of, say, common defense. It doesn't make any sense for one country to have to assume all of Europe's defense effort. I mean, if you look at the American election campaign, there are hints there that the Americans are no longer willing to provide Europe's military defense everywhere. At the same time, I'm not somebody who wishes to speak in favor of Europe's increased militarization, but at the same time it is our responsibility to ensure peace and order on our own continent. And then you've got digital Europe as well. I mean, once again here we are ensuring that this comes to fruition, but it's a long process. It's going to take us right up to 2025. We want Wi-Fi everywhere. We need to have connectivity, as we say in German, right across Europe to ensure that nobody is excluded from the new technologies and what they offer. This applies to the national member states and the European Union. We've got to be even more resolute in combating youth unemployment, which is terrifyingly high. I mean, we don't want the European continent to be the continent of youth unemployment, and this is one commitment for your generation and people even younger than you. You may be surprised that there are people even younger than you. If all we can promise them is that they will have less prosperity than their children, then we're going to lose.
My final question, Mr. Juncker, as President of the European Commission, you're a very experienced politician, but I'm sure you made mistakes like all people do. If there are three things perhaps that you could give young people, what they should do better than your generation, that would be very helpful, I think.
not particularly a typical representative of my generation or the generation prior to yours, if you like. There are quite a number of people who could do that better than I could. But one mistake which was made, and it brings me back to a point you made earlier, that basically we tend not to like other people. I mean, you're in your own country. This is a transcontinental phenomenon. It may seem to be a bit naive, but I genuinely feel that all people are equal in terms of rights, opportunities, and chances. We cannot allow anybody's future to be cut off from them. I think we need to be more interested, express more interest in people from other continents. Africa is a continent which is arising, if you like, and it's not just a question of charity. We've got to invest in Africa, and the Commission has made proposals very recently for this. I mean, it's all very well to have a tear in your eye when you think about hunger and refugees and migration, but you've got to go beyond that and actually do something. This is something which the European governments and the European business federations, companies, and so on also need to do. They need to invest in Africa, and I think that's something which will shape the future.
Very important indeed. Thank you very much, Mr. Juncker. Thank you for answering all my questions. I'm sure there are a lot of other questions as well, but you've given us some very interesting answers. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
I've got to move away for a moment.
Okay. Again, well, if you would just stand here, and that was a great discussion.
Is that our camera?
This is our camera here.
Okay.
You need to turn around and face me this way. There we go. If you would just move that way a little bit.
Okay.
Perfect.
Fine.
So that was a great discussion. I think you covered so many issues, past, present, and future.
Yeah.
Along with our partner Debating Europe, we've asked our online audiences to send in questions too, using the hashtag #AskJuncker. Now, one topic that Jonas didn't bring up, but you discussed obviously in your State of the Union address, was Brexit.
Yeah.
And so we have a question about Brexit, and that comes from Duncan.
Yeah.
And he asks, Brexit was a symptom, not the cause. If the cause goes untreated, then things get worse. So what would you diagnose as the cause of Brexit?
This is a simple and an easy question.
Good.
Asking for thousands of answers. Of course, Brexit means that something is wrong in Europe. But Brexit means also that something was wrong in Britain. If over 40 years you are explaining to your general public that European Union is stupid, that it is nothing worth, that you have to leave, that the European Union is bringing, as the membership is not any advantages to your populations, you can't be surprised that the day you ask people, do you want to stay or do you want to leave, that a too high number of British in the case we are discussing are expressing the view that it's better to leave. On Europe, there are so many lies, so many half-truths which are circulated around that one cannot be surprised. But I'm not giving to the British vote only that explanation. I do think that there was a European message in this too.
Okay. So we're going to go now to our next young YouTube creator, and it's the lovely Laetitia.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little bit about Laetitia. Laetitia is from France, and on her channel she likes to talk about issues such as ecology and recycling. She also took part in a YouTube initiative, Toi-même tu filmes, which was aimed at combating hate speech. Now, Laetitia is in a recreation of her little apartment.
Laetitia, bonjour.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président.
Good afternoon, President. Please take a seat. I'd like to welcome you to my living room. Those who are looking at us right now need to know that this is not a real living room, but you obviously have had a say in the decor. It's pretty close to the reality. I'd like to thank you, first of all, for meeting me here today. I am absolutely honored and happy because you are at the head of Europe's top institution, and I'm very, very happy to be able to ask you questions on behalf of my community and to represent young people in Europe and young French people. So many thanks for welcoming. My first question is this. Many young Europeans are very sensitive to the environment and the effects of chemical products on our health. On YouTube, for example, I talk about this quite a lot because the environment I grow up in is very important to me. So the question of endocrine disruptors is very, very important. I'm not convinced that this is not linked to health issues. On the issue of endocrine disruptors, the EU has been working towards a ban, but this is linked to the issue of Roundup as well, which could give rise to cancers in certain people and which has not yet been banned either. So this brings me back to the feeling I've got as a result of all this, that maybe the role of the Commission is to give us the prospect of bans which never arrive and to allow multinationals to continue to earn huge amounts of money by selling damaging chemicals. So the question is this, President. Should we be worried? How can you reassure me?
We're working on these very issues. Among scientists, views differ on some of these products, substances you mentioned. I would tend to be among those, not necessarily who are afraid, but who ask questions, who wonder what's happening here. Sometimes one does wonder whether the published scientific opinions, which are disseminated worldwide, whether these are entirely uninfluenced by the major producers, major corporations. The Commission is working on this matter, and we don't take it lightly. We take it very seriously. So how can I put it? I take this problem very seriously.
Thank you very much. Well, my second question is this. Your predecessor in the European Commission, Mr. Barroso, went to Goldman Sachs this summer. Personally, I was struck by this because as a citizen, I was wondering whether, as his role as president, maybe he might have been on good terms with his future employer. And now that he's in a private bank, basically, he could maybe have some state secrets in his pockets, or maybe these are just doubts I've got in my mind. Well, a lot of other doubts too, I'm sure. Okay, these were the things that occurred to me. Maybe that's not the most important thing, but on this nomination, you said in the newspaper Le Soir that you didn't have any problem with him working in a private company because he respected the waiting period under European law of 18 months. Now, I understand this, but you added the fact that he worked for this bank could be a problem for you. I was a bit surprised and confused by all of this. I didn't quite understand. I'm just wondering why this particular bank might give rise to some problems. I don't really understand.
Well, yes. Firstly, I think José Emmanuel Barroso is an honest man, and he's a friend. He decided to join the Goldman Sachs group after the 18 months set out in the Commission's Code of Good Conduct. And none of our member states have equally stringent codes of good conduct, including your own country. So he did play by the rules. I don't see any major issue with his working in the financial sector. I understood that, but my question was this particular bank. Well, I'll come to the issue of Goldman Sachs. If somebody leaves a major company to become a minister, for example, nobody has a problem with that. As if somebody who was working for a company, a major international company or a major international bank, and they're very well paid for that, if they didn't bring with them all the knowledge and know-how, the reflexes that they've developed over the years working in the private sector, nobody worries about that. But if a politician leaves the world of politics to work in the private sector, which is completely normal in the United States, for example, where you have a constant toing and froing between the public sector and the private sector, people do ask questions about this. in Europe. Now, personally, I don't have a problem with his working for a private bank, but maybe not this bank. Goldman Sachs was one of the organizations which knowingly or unknowingly contributed to the enormous financial crisis we had between 2007 and 2009 approximately. So one does wonder about the particular bank that he has ended up working for.
Thank you. Now we've got another question. Very recently, over the past few months, people have talked about a lot of revelations, in France in particular, whereby Luxembourg secretly permitted multinationals like McDonald's and Pepsi to repatriate all the profits they had made in European countries and to end up paying, say, 1% in tax. When I was preparing this interview, I was a bit surprised because my husband, who is a small company, pays 33% in tax, and there was a big gap between these two rates. Luckily, you stated that the Commission was going to do what is necessary to ensure that you give priority to this social injustice, and I was happy to hear that. But then I wondered, it may be a bit naive, this question, but basically, are you yourself in the best position to be able to deal with this social injustice? Nothing personal, this is not an attack in any way, but you can please do attack me if you wish to do so. No, certainly, I wouldn't do that, but the question is this. Somebody who was a finance minister of Europe's biggest tax haven for 18 years, giving them the task of fighting tax abuse, is that not like putting a bank robber as a policeman?
Well, very often it's said that bank robbers and poachers are among the very best at the service of our police forces. But you're referring to my country of origin. Of course, I'm no longer a Luxembourg politician. But this, I think, does show the typical view among French people of Luxembourg. Each country, in reality, is a tax haven for its neighbor. Are you quite sure that, for example, the tax rulings, as they were called, that is arrangements between inland revenue services and companies, are you quite sure that didn't happen in France? I'm not sure at all. It's true. That's why I'm asking you the question. I think it would be worth, indeed, looking into this. But what I can say at this stage is that you won't be very happy with what you discover if you do investigate this closely. But aside from that, I am quite convinced, have been and am still convinced, that we need clear rules on tax issues in Europe. Companies should pay taxes where they make profits. And that is what the Commission, which I preside, is trying to achieve. We take that very seriously, as you will see with the ruling on Apple in Ireland and other such rulings, regardless of which countries or persons may be concerned. And we will see this continue. I never made any decisions on tax rulings for companies in Luxembourg. That was a matter for the tax administration, which doesn't mean that we didn't discuss matters with major companies that wanted to come and set up businesses in Luxembourg. Of course, we had contacts with the major international corporations, but I didn't try to exert any influence on the tax rulings, on tax arrangements of individual companies. I think all those who have been prime ministers or finance ministers, I wish they could all say the same.
Thank you very much for having explained this. That does throw some light on it for me, and I will certainly take you up on that and examine the issue. And the next question has been asked by a lot of people in my community. I've got a YouTube channel where I talk a lot about the environment, as you know. It's the way the lobbies influence European legislation. In the first question I asked you, I talked about the lobbies in the organic lobby, but my listeners were interested in lobbying in all the other domains as well, and they pointed out, for example, that citizens who elect their members of parliament elected members who cannot actually vote on legislation. I was a bit surprised to see that there are 20 to 30,000 lobbyists in Brussels, and the industry they represent spend millions on exercising influence. Philip Morris is an example, 160 full-time lobbyists, 1.5 million Europe to organize dinners and other such events. So I'm just wondering, at least I feel that they make this effort and it's successful in some cases. What about the pharmaceuticals industry? I noted that via various lobby groups, your commission between 2014 and 2015 meet lobbyists up to twice a week. Inevitably, that creates a kind of a working relation which is sustained and maintained by the lobbying groups. I chair a small humanitarian association in France, and we link to organic produce. What about citizens groups like me? How can they have the same budget and therefore the same opportunity to exercise influence as the big companies? Which brings me to the question I want to ask you. I find it difficult to understand or believe that the EU can guarantee the general interest of the people rather than the general interest of business. They seem to be walking hand in hand with the latter sometimes. So do you feel that the EU can guarantee the welfare of people or companies? Could you react to that?
In general terms, it's not one against the other. Citizens, consumers, the major pharmaceutical companies or other businesses, they're not against each other. But some of the points you make are quite right. Now, it is true that members of the European Parliament do actually approve, do vote laws, bring new legislation into effect. From the beginning of the term of office of the present Commission, we have been setting out to draw up a very transparent registry of lobbyists. Now, you mentioned that we have meetings two days a week or twice a week with lobbyists. How do you know this? It's precisely because we publish this registry. It's put in the public domain. Commissioners, vice presidents, president of the Commission, directors general, whenever we meet lobbyists, we have to divulge this to the general public. We have to say which lobbyists we received, be it in our offices, be it in a pub or a restaurant in Brussels, because people are entitled to know who is trying to influence decisions. I'm not against lobbying in principle, provided that lobbying is part of a transparent and open decision-making process. It's fair enough for companies or consumer organizations to put forward and to defend their interests. But let's not forget that it's not the European budget which provides the budget for lobbying groups. However, we do provide financial support to other lobbying groups, green organizations, for example, or consumer organizations. The key point, I think, is that Europeans are entitled to know who has met whom on what issues.
So, if I imagine my position as a citizen, as a young woman, we're looking at a situation where you've got lobbyists with millions of euro to do their lobbying, and the reply is, okay, you can register yourself and declare that you're lobbyists.
No, that's not the way it is. No, that's not the way it is. If I, for example, meet with a major banker, I publish that. I make it clear, and those who are following these matters will be aware of whether this business has actually been able to influence the decisions made, the initiatives taken by the European Commission or the European Parliament. I am strongly in favor of transparency. And I'm not their favorite, I can assure you. Let me just reassure you on that point.
Yes, indeed, I am reassured. I have been reassured. Okay, well, listen. I have asked you all the questions I've got. We've run out of time, so I'd like to thank you, President, for having played along with this game. Yes, I would love to continue. In fact, yes, indeed. Who decided that we have to stop now? I think time is up, I'm afraid, apparently. I'm not sure that the Commission has decided this. The Commission doesn't decide everything, after all. So, yes, indeed, I'll hand the floor back to my colleague, who is also keen to meet you, President. Many thanks. Thank you very much. And I hope to see you again. Is this your first interview with YouTubers? Yes, but not my last. Okay. Thank you.
President Juncker. Now, that was a very interesting and frank discussion with Laetitia. Yeah. Now, along with Euronews and Debating Europe, I'd like to squeeze in a question too that we got in with the hashtag Ask Juncker. Because in your State of the Union address, you evoked the fact that you're very concerned that younger generations could well be poorer than their parents. And this question touches upon that issue. And it's not necessarily a question of poverty, but also of quality of life. And this question is from Lino. And he says, investment doesn't matter if people have low wages, poor working conditions and unsecure contracts. How will you ensure that European economic growth delivers high quality jobs?
The easy answer to this.
My questions are always easy.
No. The question is more complicated, it seems. It's a competence, as we are saying, of national member states and not so much of the Commission. But having been a Minister of Labour for 17 years, I'm very sensitive to this question, and that's why we did launch, during the mandate of this Commission, a broad consultation on a pillar of social rights for workers, minimal rights for social workers. I do think that, flexibility is from time to time necessary, but over the last 20 years, there is a poison in our social relationships nationally and from a European point of view, and that is that sometimes blind flexibility was introduced in the labor relations. My father was a steelworker. If he had been confronted to labor contracts having to be renewed 6 months after 6 months, so having no security at all as far as the planification of the material part of his life is concerned, I would not have been able to go to university. So I'm very sensitive to this problem of precarity. Is that English? Précarité in French. Precarity, no? Weak relations. Enterprises, companies are asking for security. Workers have the same security too.
Okay. Well, these are issues that are going to resonate with our YouTube communities that are represented here. I'd like to introduce you now to Łukasz. Łukasz is from Poland. Yeah. He conducts interviews in his tiny
He's very
Warsaw...
popular in Poland, I'm told.
He's very popular, and he conducts interviews in his tiny Warsaw apartment.
I will destroy his reputation.
Well, and also his TEDx speech, because he also delivered a TEDx speech about going from a dreamer to a doer. Well, you seem to know all about him. Did you know that he met Lady Gaga?
No, but it was his decision.
Anyway, please let me introduce you to Łukasz.
Welcome, Mr. President.
Jonas, good to see you.
Good to see you. So that's my something like new studio flat.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah, the environment is changing here.
With the beautiful view.
Yeah.
Aye. So first of all, let's do some promotion.
Can I fuel my engine first?
Of course. And then let's do some promotion for my channel. What do you know about my talk show? Do you know anything?
I know things I have asked. Because when I'm meeting lobbyists like you, I want to know who the guys are.
Okay.
And now I have a clear picture.
Okay, fantastic.
Of what you are doing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
When I published a note about having an interview with you, many people reacted to you with mixed emotion. What is the most common criticism against you, and how do you react to that?
You are not speaking about Poland.
Sorry?
You are not referring to the Polish situation, but to the overall situation. I think that what is very often opposed to the way I'm delivering my job is the fact that I would not speak to people. That I would be sitting here in this Parliament palace, not discussing in the streets with people. If you are Luxembourg, that's a small country, you know?
Yeah.
And I was Labour Minister there for 17 years. I was Finance Minister. I was Prime Minister for 19 years. If you are crossing the streets of Luxembourg, don't imagine 1 second that people are respectfully changing the side of the street, they are coming to me and saying, listen, Prime Minister, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. The same is happening here in Brussels, less because I have some security problems here, but when I'm on holiday, the same is happening. So I don't have the impression to live beneath the reality. People are describing their reality to me, and that's the main criticism, that I wouldn't do that as if I was blind. I'm not blind.
Can a politician admit to making a mistake? And if you were to admit making a wrong decision, what would it be?
That happens often, in my case, not very often, but often. If I'm misled, if I'm taking decisions which reveal themselves as having been stupid or not reflected, studied enough, I'm saying it. I had, since I'm in politics, one principle. If I'm changing my mind, I'm telling the public that I have changed my mind. I'm telling the public why I was changing my mind. Do you never change your mind?
Of course I change.
Yeah. Are you explaining this to your friends?
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
My friends is the German public.
Great. So let's talk about European Union. If you can tell me, how can young Europeans influence it?
By taking the floor, by being more vocal, by being critical. I don't think that we can really progress if everyone is saying you are right. People have to tell us what is wrong, and we have to listen to these people, not giving in the appreciations, the judgments they are making. If it has to be done, it has to be done. I was never in favor of this trick, because it's a trick, to say yes to everything young people are saying or requesting. Those who are saying yes, 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 you are excellent, yeah, they are not respecting.
That's true.
Young people. So if you respect someone you are discussing with, who is stopping on the street, saying, then you have to give an honest response. And then, very often, the honest responses I'm given are abrupt, spontaneous reactions. But sometimes, when I'm back in my office, there was something true in this, and that's the way I'm trying to do my job. But I'm not hesitating all the time. I mean,
of course,
you cannot from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock in the evening ask yourself if you are okay. You have to take decisions.
And what can Brussels do to make education more accessible?
But the treaties. I know that young people don't like a reference to treaties, but that's the world I'm living in. The treaties are reserving, privileging national competencies when it comes to education. This is not a real European duty, because we have 28 countries. We have, I don't know how many regions in Europe, so many languages, so many cultures, so many colors in Europe, that you cannot, from a central position, decide how education should be dealt with and organized in different countries and regions. Take the example of Spain, because I don't want to take a Polish example. They have the Basques, they have Catalonians, they have the Kingdom of Spain, but things are very different from one region to the other. How can you imagine that in Brussels a commissioner or even the president of the commission could say, so many hours for German, so many hours for philosophy, so many hours for sports, so many... That's not possible. So it's a matter for member states. What the European Union can do is to organize, if it's necessary, in a transporting way, the academic cycle of young Europeans. We have this Erasmus program. Millions of young Europeans have been part of this Erasmus program. 1 out of 3 young Europeans having been trained or having been in a system, in a training system in a European company, is getting a job in that company. We have till now, but that's a collateral effect, 3 million marriages concluded, if I can say so, between those who were part of the Erasmus program. We would like to expand this Erasmus Plus program to apprentices, because it's not only for academics, it's also for apprentices. I have suggested the other day in the European Parliament to create a corps of young European volunteers, because I would like young Europeans to go outside of Europe, to discover the world, to be helpful in a solidarity approach, earthquakes, refugee crisis, things like that. I would like us to have 200,000 people from now to 2020 being part of that solidarity program, because I know that the youngsters are generous.
That's a great idea.
Those of my generation, not really, but in some years from now, I will look back. Young people in Europe, they are looking to the future, and those who are in charge of preparing in the best way possible the future, they have to be in permanent contact with young people, and this corps of volunteers is one way how to bring the youth of Europe into a position of responsibility taking.
I heard your speech yesterday, and you said,
time.
yes, and actually I really like it.
Yeah.
And you said that European Union is not in a good shape.
Yeah.
Why is like that?
Because the domains where we are giving more importance to our divisions than to our intersections is too great, and the domains where we are acting in solidarity are not numerous enough, and I would change this. I would like to bridge the differences and the divergences between East and West and South and North, in order to have the European Union finding back the basic principles which were at the origins of the creation of the European Union, that we have to move together in the same direction, because I don't think that a nation or a state or a country, whatever it would be, is strong enough to survive in a globally complicated world. We are a very small continent, the smallest, by the way, without knowing it, because we still do think that we are the masters of the world. We are not. And the world doesn't need masters. It needs responsible actors, not masters dictating how things should be done. And as we are the smallest continent, we should not invest too much in our differences and divergences, but trying to find a mainstream, a common way, a common channel, how to swim into the direction of the next century, of the next decades. We are at the beginning of a century, so the next century is far away. No, it's tomorrow morning.
Let's talk about your private life. I would like to ask you, what are the benefits in private life of having your position?
None.
Nothing? Or you don't want to talk about this?
No, first, I don't want to talk about my private life and my intimacy. I'm trying to safeguard this.
Actually, that's a fantastic idea. I like it.
No, because I'm not a movie star. Huh? I'm not interested in having the next Oscar by
I saw
exposing
some videos with you. I think you are a movie star, trust me. Sometimes you look like a movie star, I think.
No, I like other people. That's a different
reason.
Yeah. I'm embracing and kissing. That's what you are referring to. Did I kiss you?
No, not yet.
I will kiss you when the camera is...
Why not now? Okay, so we have a media coverage.
Now you
already.
No, but my private life is has to be run in a totally separated way from what I'm doing as a president of the Commission. And if I'm allowing others to penetrate, to insert themselves in my private life, people are becoming confused, because they don't make no longer the distinction between the public man I am and the private guy I am. I like the private guy, but I don't tell you why.
Okay. When you want to talk with some president, what do you do? Do you just dial them, or is there some procedure?
I have the mobile phone numbers of all
You
those.
have or you don't have?
I have.
Okay.
I have, yeah. Unfortunately, but because these things are ringing from time to time. No. I have a direct, I have to say, personal contact with my colleagues in the European Union, outside the European Union. I know them for, some of them I know them for decades. And I'm not talking to them like prime ministers or presidents are normally talking. That's not my way of doing my job. I have established a personal relation, sometimes rich of conflicts, but nevertheless, in principle, friendly. No. I'm speaking from human being to human being. That's the way to make politics in the interest of those who are observing us.
But maybe you can fix me an interview with Barack Obama when he's no longer US president. That's my huge dream.
Do you want to have his phone number?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. I don't think that this would be a good idea. It would be a good idea to have an interview with him, but I don't think that he wouldn't appreciate it if I would ship his phone number to you.
We're going to try later. Thank you so much for the interview.
Thank
it was
you.
really a pleasure to
And
be
I
here.
would like, because Poland is Poland.
Because what?
Because Poland is Poland.
Yeah.
To send a message to those who are watching us in Poland. Because very often it is said that Juncker is against Poland and all these things. I said in the European Parliament yesterday that Poland is a great nation. And Poland is a great nation. And I want to have as normal and friendly relations as possible between, how could I say, my institution, the Commission, and Poland. I like the Polish.
Thank you so much. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.